In the far emptiness of space, where stars shone like tiny fires in an endless ocean, the Veiled Dominion ruled with power and pride. The Dominion was not just one race, but a mighty collection of alien species, bound together by strength, fear, and the belief that nothing in the galaxy could surprise them anymore. They had seen monsters that could swallow moons, storms that could rip through planets, and battles that turned entire worlds into ashes. Fear was something they believed they had mastered long ago. To them, fear was an old enemy they had already defeated. But destiny was waiting to prove them wrong. The Veiled Dominion had always sent explorers to search the edges of the known universe. Their mission was to find new resources, new species, and sometimes new conquests. One such exploration ship, called the Cathar's Light, was commanded by Captain Rethvar, a proud warrior of the Cathari race, tall, scaled, and born in a world where courage was worshipped. His ship carried a mixed crew of different alien kinds, each intelligent, each loyal to the Dominion's banner. They had traveled through dozens of star systems, scanning planets and moons, searching for anything of value. Most of the time, they found only silence and dust. But then one day they found something strange. It began as a weak signal, a soft pulse of radio waves coming from a blue and green planet in an uncharted system. The signal was old, almost forgotten, but still repeating. The data was primitive, like the kind made by early civilizations thousands of years ago. The crew analyzed it and found fragments of sound, music, voices, laughter, and sometimes cries. It was unlike anything they had ever heard. The humans' old broadcasts were still traveling through space, reaching them by accident. The crew of Cathar's Light listened to it with confusion. Some of them laughed, some were puzzled. The sounds carried emotion, energy, and something else, a strange courage hidden between every word. Captain Rethvar decided to investigate. He gave the order to set a course for the small system the humans called Sol. The journey took months. They crossed through regions of cold darkness where even light seemed to die. Finally, when they arrived, they found the planet called Earth. Blue oceans, white clouds, and vast lands full of life. From space, it looked peaceful, almost innocent. The crew expected to find primitive beings still struggling with fire and metal, but as their scanners came alive, the data shocked them. Earth was covered with cities glowing in the night, signals dancing across the sky, machines orbiting above it. The humans had already reached space. They were building ships, sending probes, and dreaming of stars. Rethvar stood silent for a moment. "So," he said slowly, "they are not primitives. They are dreamers." The crew began to observe humans from a distance, watching their transmissions, their histories, and their wars. They saw pictures of humans standing in the middle of fire, helping strangers, fighting enemies far stronger than themselves and still surviving. The more they watched, the more uneasy they felt. Humans did not act like most intelligent species. When faced with danger, other species avoided it. But humans, they walked straight into it. They took risks that seemed insane. They climbed mountains, dived into oceans, and even went to war knowing they might not come back. The aliens could not understand such behavior. To learn more, Rethvar decided to land a small observation craft on the surface of Earth, hidden from human eyes. They landed quietly in a desert at night, using cloaking fields to stay unseen. From there, they released small drones to study human life closely. The drones flew over cities, villages, and battlefields. They recorded everything: laughter, music, art, and violence. The aliens watched as humans danced, argued, and risked their lives for others. One recording showed a firefighter running into a burning building to save a child. The alien officers couldn't believe what they were seeing. "He knows he might die," one said. "Why doesn't he run away?" Rethvar replied softly, "Because fear doesn't stop them." As days passed, the aliens realized that humans didn't ignore fear. They used it. Their history was full of wars, disasters, and tragedies, but every time they fell, they stood up again. The Veiled Dominion had always believed fear made beings weak. But for humans, fear seemed to make them stronger. They learned from pain, from mistakes, from loss. It was a concept the aliens couldn't fully understand. Yet they felt something new, not fear of humans, but a strange respect that bordered on discomfort. One night, while orbiting above the planet, the crew intercepted a human signal from a space station. It was a group of astronauts talking to each other. One of them said, "Sometimes I look down at Earth and think how fragile we are. But we keep fighting, don't we?" The others laughed softly and agreed. The words echoed in the silent alien ship, fragile, yet fighting. Weak, yet unstoppable. The aliens didn't know what to make of it. Rethvar called for a private meeting. "We have observed many worlds," he said, his deep voice echoing through the command hall. "But none like this one. These creatures fear everything. Death, pain, loss. Yet they act as if those things cannot stop them. They are not fearless, but they fight as if they are." His second-in-command, a cautious officer named Vekalar, frowned. "Should we report them to the Dominion as a threat?" Rethvar hesitated. "Not yet," he said. "We do not understand them enough to judge. For now, we watch." Over the next few days, the aliens continued to learn more. They saw how humans built machines that flew faster than sound, how they sent probes to other worlds, how they dreamed of touching the stars. For every failure, they tried again. The aliens began to whisper among themselves. What if they come to space one day? What if they find us first? The thought made some of them nervous. On the 7th day of their orbit, something unexpected happened. A human satellite detected the Veil ship's presence. Just a faint energy signature, but enough to raise alarms. The humans sent out a message in every direction. "Unknown signal detected. Identify yourself." The aliens panicked. They had been discovered by a species that was not supposed to even know they existed. The Dominion's rule was clear: never be seen by a pre-spacefaring race. But these humans had already stepped into the edge of space. They were closer than anyone realized. Captain Rethvar watched the human message repeat again and again. He could have left, but something inside him wanted to respond. Against regulations, he ordered his communications officer to send a brief transmission. It was only one sentence: "We are observing. Do not be afraid." Minutes later, they received a reply from Earth, calm, steady, and almost challenging. It said, "We are never afraid." The words hung in the air of the alien ship like a thunderclap. The crew exchanged glances. They didn't understand how a young, small species could speak such words to an empire that ruled half the galaxy. But humans had said it without hesitation. It was not arrogance. It was truth. That night, Captain Rethvar stood alone in his cabin, looking out at Earth through the viewport. Clouds swirled over blue oceans, storms flashed like living lights, and continents glowed softly beneath the night sky. It was beautiful and terrifying. He whispered to himself, "They are dangerous. Not because of their weapons, because of their spirit." The next morning, the Cathar's light left Earth's orbit silently. The humans never saw them again. But their brief message was recorded and analyzed for years. On the alien ship, the crew was quiet. They had faced monstrous creatures and deadly storms, but none of those had made them feel what they now felt. A strange, cold awareness that there was something in this small world that could shake even the bravest heart. As the ship disappeared into the darkness between stars, Rethvar made his final report. "We have found a world of fire and hope. Its inhabitants are fragile yet fearless. They laugh beside death and rise after every fall. The Dominion believes it knows fear, but it has not yet faced humans." And in that moment, in the silence of deep space, every member of the Cathar's light knew that something had changed forever. The Vial Dominion's greatest lesson was waiting to be learned, and it had begun on a small blue planet called Earth. After the strange encounter with Earth, Captain Rethvar and his crew could not stop thinking about the humans. Their short exchange with them had left a deep mark on everyone aboard the Cathar's light. The words, "We are never afraid," echoed again and again in Rethvar's mind, like a haunting melody. For a species so young, so fragile, to speak such bold words was not arrogance. It was something far more powerful. It was belief. It was conviction. And that made them dangerous in a way the Vial Dominion had never faced before. When the Cathar's light returned to the Dominion's command station orbiting the planet Vela Prime, Rethvar filed his official report. The High Council reviewed it with skepticism. Some members laughed at his words, saying he was exaggerating the potential of a small developing species. "Primitive planets always seem impressive to explorers," one elder scoffed. "Fear changes perception." Rethvar simply replied, "Then you should meet them yourself." His tone carried no emotion, but something in his voice made even the elder fall silent. Months later, the Dominion decided to act. They approved a formal observation and contact mission to Earth, not for conquest but to study the species that had caught Rethvar's attention. A diplomatic envoy was formed, and to his surprise, Rethvar was ordered to lead it. He felt a strange pull inside him, something between dread and curiosity. The humans had unsettled him, but he could not resist the urge to understand them better. The journey back to the Sol system was long, and during the travel, Rethvar's crew debated endlessly about humans. Some admired them, others mocked them. "They are reckless," said Officer Veklar. "They destroy their own world and call it progress." "And yet," another officer replied softly, "they keep surviving." That single sentence silenced the room. Survival. Yes, that was the word that defined them. When the Vael diplomatic ship finally arrived near Earth's orbit, humanity had already advanced further. They had colonies on the Moon and a growing presence on Mars. Communication satellites covered the skies like glowing fireflies. The aliens realized that humans were evolving fast, faster than any species they had ever recorded. If they were this advanced now, what would they become in 100 years? The thought was both thrilling and frightening. Rethvar sent a coded message toward Earth offering peace and communication. To his surprise, a response came in less than an hour. The humans had detected them again, just as before, but this time they were ready. A calm human voice spoke through the translator. "This is the United Earth Alliance. We acknowledge your presence. Identify yourselves." The crew exchanged nervous glances. Most first contacts took weeks or months to establish. But humans were direct and quick. Rethvar stepped forward and spoke. "We are representatives of the Vael Dominion. We come in peace to establish communication and exchange knowledge." The translator repeated his words in English. There was a pause, and then the human replied, "We accept your proposal, Captain Rethvar. We will meet you in orbit around Mars." And so, the first official meeting between humans and the Vael Dominion was arranged. The humans sent one of their newest vessels, the Aurora, a sleek warship redesigned for diplomacy. When the Cathar's light approached it, the alien crew was surprised by its efficiency. It was not as advanced as their ships, but it was powerful, sturdy, and radiated a sense of readiness, as if it could turn from a diplomatic cruiser into a warship in seconds. When the airlock opened and the first human stepped aboard, the aliens felt a strange tension. The humans were smaller, softer, and lacked the natural armor or claws that many alien species had, yet there was something commanding in the way they walked. Their eyes, especially their eyes, were sharp, filled with alertness, curiosity, and something that resembled quiet strength. Rethvar noticed it immediately. They study everything, he thought. Even us. The first conversations were polite and careful. Both sides exchanged greetings and basic information. The human leader, Commander Elisa Trent, was calm and confident. Her voice carried authority without aggression. She asked intelligent questions about the Dominion, its species, and its purpose in visiting Earth. Rethvar answered with practiced diplomacy. Yet despite the smooth words, there was tension beneath the surface, like two predators circling each other, smiling but ready to strike if needed. During a private discussion, one of the alien officers asked the humans a simple question, meant as small talk. "What is your greatest fear?" The humans grew quiet for a moment. Then Commander Trent smiled slightly and said, "Extinction, but only because it means we can't fight back anymore." The room fell silent. Even the translator hesitated, as if unsure it had heard correctly. Rethvar watched her carefully. Her expression was calm, sincere, and fearless. That single sentence echoed through the room. It was not spoken with pride nor with threat, it was a truth. The aliens realized that humans were not claiming to be fearless. They admitted they did fear extinction, but their fear was tied to action. It did not freeze them. It drove them to resist, to fight, to keep living no matter the cost. It was the opposite of how the Dominion viewed fear. Among the Vael, fear was something to suppress, to conquer, to destroy. But humans turned it into power. They could turn despair into courage, pain into strength. It was as if their weakness was their greatest weapon. After the meeting, Rethvar returned to his ship in silence. His officers whispered among themselves. "They are strange," one said. "They speak of death as if it were just another challenge." "Perhaps," another replied. "That is why they keep surviving." Rethvar didn't speak. He stood by the viewing window, staring at the red surface of Mars below, thinking about the humans' words again and again. Extinction. Fight back. The following days were filled with exchanges between both sides. Humans shared details about their world, its beauty, its chaos, and its long history of conflict and unity. They didn't hide their flaws. They admitted them openly. They spoke about war, hunger, disease, and yet, how every generation fought to make things better. The aliens, in turn, shared stories about their conquests, their power, and their centuries of rule. The humans listened politely, but there was no awe in their eyes, only interest. It was as if they were studying an old story they intended to surpass someday. One evening, Rethvar was invited aboard the Aurora for a cultural exchange event. The humans showed them recordings of their music, art, and even their history of space exploration. The aliens were astonished by how much emotion humans could put into everything they created. Music that expressed sadness could make even a vile soldier feel uneasy. Paintings of war and peace carried more emotion than logic could explain. It was overwhelming. Then, at the end of the presentation, a human officer played a short video, a compilation of human achievements and struggles. It showed soldiers rescuing civilians during floods, astronauts walking on the moon, children laughing, and people rebuilding cities after destruction. The final image was a quote on the screen: "We do not fear the dark. We light it." The aliens watched in silence. Some of them looked away, uncomfortable with how deeply it affected them. After the event, Rethvar walked alone through the ship's corridor. He had faced beasts that roared and warriors that bled acid, but never had he felt this kind of unease. Humans were not powerful because of their technology. They were powerful because of something inside them, something invisible yet stronger than any weapon. He realized that for them, fear was not a curse. It was their fire. The next day, before departing, Rethvar met Commander Trent one last time. He asked her a question that had been burning inside him. "Tell me, Commander, why do your people fight so hard when the odds are impossible?" She smiled and replied, "Because fear reminds us what we have to lose, and what we have to protect." That answer stayed with him long after they left Mars. As the Veil ship moved away from the solar system, Rethvar stood at the bridge, staring back at the fading sun. His crew worked quietly, each lost in thought. They had come expecting to study a lesser species, but instead, they had discovered something that defied logic. A civilization that thrived on fear, that turned weakness into willpower, and that met danger not with retreat but with determination. In his final report to the Dominion Council, Rethvar wrote one sentence that would later become famous across many worlds. "Humans do not ignore fear, they evolve through it." And as the Cathar's light disappeared once again into the vast sea of stars, Rethvar knew deep inside that the universe had just changed. A small blue world had reminded him, and perhaps all of existence, that true strength doesn't come from the absence of fear, but from the courage to face it again and again, until fear itself bows in respect. Months passed after the meeting between humans and the Veil Dominion. The galaxy had taken notice of this new species living on the small blue world. Some saw humans as potential allies, others as future threats. The Dominion's High Council debated endlessly. Many believed the humans were too reckless and emotional to be trusted with space travel. Others argued that their courage and adaptability made them unpredictable. For a time, things remained peaceful, but peace in the galaxy was fragile, like thin glass waiting to break. It started with a mistake. A small human exploration ship, Odyssey 1, drifted too close to a Veil mining zone near Jupiter's outer orbit. The area was rich with minerals the Dominion considered sacred property. The humans had no idea such a border even existed. When their ship began collecting samples, a Veil patrol arrived. The captain of the patrol, a young and overconfident officer, warned the humans to leave immediately. The humans replied politely, explaining it was an accident and that they would withdraw. But one wrong move changed everything. When the humans tried to power their engines to leave, the energy spike was misread by the Veil as a weapon charge. Thinking it was an act of aggression, the Veil patrol fired without hesitation. The Odyssey 1 exploded instantly, leaving no survivors. The news spread across the stars like wildfire. To the Veil Dominion, it was just a small incident, a misunderstanding. But to humanity, it was an attack. Within days, Earth's communication networks came alive with anger, fear, and determination. The humans demanded justice. The United Earth Alliance declared that the destruction of Odyssey 1 would not be forgotten. They sent a message to the Dominion demanding an apology and compensation for the lives lost. The Dominion, arrogant and proud, refused. To them, humans were still a young species that should learn their place. But they didn't know who they were dealing with. When the message of refusal reached Earth, the humans did not surrender. Instead, they united. Scientists, soldiers, and leaders from every corner of the planet came together. The humans began preparing for the worst. They knew the Dominion's technology was centuries ahead, but they had something else: creativity, stubbornness, and the will to fight no matter how impossible it seemed. Factories on Earth and Mars worked day and night. Old warships were refitted, new designs were built, and strategies were formed. Meanwhile, in the Veiled Dominion, Captain Rethvar watched events unfold with growing unease. He tried to warn the Council. "Do not underestimate them," he said. "They will fight back. They do not give up." But the Council ignored him. "A few small fleets will crush them," one elder said with pride. "They are not worth our concern." Rethvar knew those words would soon bring disaster. The first battle came near the edge of Earth's solar system. A Vial assault fleet entered the area, expecting to scare the humans into submission. Instead, they found a world ready to defend itself. Human ships, smaller, slower, and less advanced, waited in hidden formations. When the Vial fleet approached, the humans launched their attack. They used strategies the aliens had never seen before. Some ships attacked from the front, while others hid behind asteroids, using stealth and timing to ambush their enemy. One Vial commander shouted in disbelief as human missiles tore through his shields. "They are not supposed to fight like this," he cried. But humans did not follow rules of war written by others. They fought with desperation and cleverness. They used every resource, every trick, every bit of chaos to their advantage. When one ship was destroyed, its crew transmitted coordinates for enemy positions before dying. When others ran out of ammunition, they rammed into enemy vessels at full speed. It was madness, and it worked. The Dominion lost several ships in that first encounter. It wasn't a decisive victory for the humans, but it shocked the galaxy. No species had ever resisted the Veil so fiercely, especially not one so young. Reports spread through the Dominion like whispers of a nightmare. "The humans fought until their ships were nothing but debris," one report said. "They are insane. They do not retreat." As more battles followed, the Dominion began to realize the truth. The humans did not fear death. They feared defeat. They fought not because they believed they could win, but because surrender was not an option in their minds. The Veil soldiers, who had been trained to fight logically, began to break down mentally. They could not understand this kind of opponent. Rethvar was ordered to take command of a new campaign to end the conflict once and for all. Though he obeyed, his heart was heavy. He knew that fighting humans was not like fighting any other species. When he saw human battle recordings, he noticed something that disturbed him deeply. Even when a human pilot was dying, their final act was not to scream or beg. It was to fight harder. Their fear did not weaken them. It fueled them. The war grew bloodier. On Mars, human colonies turned their factories into fortresses. They built giant cannons on the surface and used them to shoot at Vial ships orbiting above. In the asteroid belt, human miners converted their equipment into deadly weapons. In one battle, an entire group of miners detonated their station to destroy a Dominion cruiser, sacrificing themselves but saving Earth from bombardment. Every act of defiance made the Dominion soldiers whisper in fear. "These creatures are not normal," they said. "They fight like they want to die." The truth, however, was different. Humans did not want to die. They wanted to live so badly that they were willing to do anything to protect that chance. After months of endless conflict, the Veiled Dominion began to grow impatient. The Council ordered a final massive invasion to crush humanity completely. Hundreds of warships jumped into the Sol system, filling the skies with fire. The humans knew they couldn't win through strength alone, so they used their last desperate plan. They sent out a fleet of drones packed with explosives and EMP devices. While the drones swarmed the Dominion fleet, human warships emerged from hiding near Jupiter's shadow. The space around the gas giant turned into a storm of explosions. Human ships darted through enemy lines, attacking from unexpected angles. They used gravity, timing, and even debris fields to confuse the enemy's sensors. Many human ships were destroyed, but they took twice as many Dominion ships with them. Inside one human command ship, Captain Elena Grayson gave her final order as her vessel burned around her. "We hold the line. For Earth. For the living." Her last transmission became a legend repeated by generations after her. The Vial soldiers who heard it later said they could feel her voice echoing even after she was gone. Rethvar's fleet won the battle near Jupiter, but it didn't feel like victory. Half his ships were destroyed and the rest were damaged. The humans were still fighting. Even with their fleets in ruins, they refused to surrender. Rethvar stood on his bridge watching human escape pods launching toward Earth. His officer turned to him and said, "They're running." Rethvar shook his head slowly. "No," he said. "They're regrouping." Back on Earth, the survivors worked day and night to rebuild. Cities were dark, food was short, and hope was fading, but the people kept going. They sang songs, told stories, and reminded each other that fear was not the enemy. Fear was what made them strong. The Dominion's council finally began to understand what Rethvar had tried to warn them about. They had expected an easy victory, but what they found was a nightmare they could not erase. Every battle they fought only made the humans stronger. Every life lost became a reason to fight harder. Throughout the galaxy, the legend of humanity began to spread. Other species whispered about the Death Worlders, the beings from the planet where everything tried to kill you, yet life still thrived. They said the humans were born in danger, molded by struggle, and driven by the one thing the Veiled Dominion never truly understood: hope. Rethvar sent one final report to his superiors. "We are fighting a species that does not surrender. Fear does not control them, it drives them. If we continue this war, it will not end in our favor." But his warning came too late. The Dominion had already lost something far more important than ships or soldiers. They had lost their certainty. As the fires of battle continued to burn through the solar system, one truth became clear to everyone who faced the humans. They were not fearless. They were afraid, deeply afraid, but unlike others, they didn't hide from that fear. They carried it with them, and that made them unstoppable. The Veiled Dominion had spent centuries believing they understood the meaning of fear. But now, as they watched their fleets crumble before the determination of a small and fragile world, they realized they had been wrong. They didn't truly know fear until humans showed them what it really meant. The war between humans and the Veiled Dominion had turned into something no one expected. What began as a single tragic mistake had grown into a storm that burned across the stars. The Dominion had power, technology, and numbers. Humans had only courage, desperation, and the fire of survival in their hearts. Yet somehow that was enough to keep them standing. Every battle that should have crushed humanity only made them fight harder. Every loss pushed them to adapt faster. And now, as the war reached its breaking point, both sides knew that the next confrontation would decide everything. The final battle began near Jupiter. The massive planet hung like a red and gold giant in the void, its storms twisting endlessly. Around it, thousands of ships gathered. The Veiled Dominion had sent its greatest fleet. Hundreds of battleships, carriers, and destroyers, all armed with weapons capable of tearing through planets. It was called the Cleansing Armada. Its goal was simple: erase the human race completely. The Dominion believed that fear had made humans dangerous, so they would end them before that danger spread any further. On the other side, near the shadow of Jupiter's moons, waited what was left of the human defense fleet. Many ships were damaged, their hulls scarred from previous battles. Fuel was low, weapons were limited, and half their systems barely worked. But no one thought about surrender. The captains knew this would be their last stand. They gathered their fleets into formation, broadcasting a single message across every ship: "We hold the line for Earth." Captain Elena Grayson, now the commander of the entire fleet, stood on the bridge of her flagship Solaris. The flickering lights and the hum of damaged systems surrounded her, but her eyes were calm. She looked at the faces of her crew, tired, scared, but determined. "They think fear will break us," she said. "Let's show them what fear really means to humans." The Vial fleet began its advance. Waves of energy weapons cut through the darkness like lightning. Explosions lit up the void. The human ships fired back with everything they had. Missiles streaked through the sky. Lasers tore across the enemy's shields, and ships on both sides turned into burning wrecks. It was chaos, a dance of death between courage and power, but soon the difference in strength became clear. The Dominion's ships were too many, too strong. One by one, human vessels began to fall. The Dauntless was destroyed while protecting a medical carrier. The Iron Wing lost its engines and rammed straight into a Veil destroyer, destroying both. Every death hurt, but each sacrifice slowed the enemy. For every human ship that was lost, another found a way to hit back harder. Captain Rethvar led the Dominion's main assault force. As he watched the human fleet fight, something inside him twisted. He had fought countless battles in his life, but never against opponents like these. He saw human ships refuse to retreat even when surrounded, pilots ejecting into space only to guide missiles manually before dying. He whispered quietly to himself, "They should be afraid, but they fight like they're free of fear." His second-in-command, Veklar, stared at the burning battlefield and said, "They are mad, Captain. They fight even when there is no chance of victory." Rethvar shook his head slowly. No, not madness, purpose. He could feel it now. Humans did not fight to win. They fought because giving up was something their hearts could not accept. Back on Earth, every city watched the battle unfold through transmissions. People gathered around screens in dark rooms, praying silently. Children held the hands of their parents. Soldiers listened to the radio in bunkers, and pilots on standby whispered to themselves, "Hold on, just hold on." The people knew they couldn't do much, but they refused to lose hope. Even in fear, there was unity. Even in despair, there was strength. In orbit, as the battle raged on, a human engineering ship called Vigil activated a last resort weapon hidden near Jupiter's moon, Europa. It was an enormous magnetic cannon built from spare parts, debris, and salvaged alien technology. The project had been a desperate gamble. When it fired, the blast was strong enough to pierce the shields of several Dominion ships, tearing through them like paper. For a moment, the humans cheered. But the weapon overloaded and exploded, destroying the Vigil and everyone aboard. The crew had known this would happen. They stayed to make sure it fired anyway. The Dominion began losing ships faster than expected. Their commanders grew frustrated. The humans had less of everything, less power, less equipment, less time. But they had more heart. Each time the Vael fleet pushed forward, humans countered with something new: stealth attacks, decoy beacons, and ambushes from wrecked ships. It was as if the humans refused to die quietly. Then came the turning point. The Dominion launched its superweapon, a massive beam that could destroy an entire planet. It was aimed at Earth. The humans knew they had only minutes before it fired. Captain Grayson made a choice that would change everything. She gathered all remaining ships and ordered a direct assault on the enemy's flagship, Valthar Prime, where Rethvar commanded. The attack was suicidal. The Dominion's defense lines were nearly impossible to break. But the humans went anyway. They moved through waves of enemy fire, losing dozens of ships in seconds. The human flagship Solaris took heavy damage. Sparks flew across the bridge as systems failed. "We're not going to make it," shouted an officer. Grayson just smiled faintly. "Then we'll make sure they remember us." As the human ships reached the enemy flagship, they unleashed everything: missiles, drones, torpedoes, and railgun fire. The Dominion's shields began to flicker. Rethvar's officers screamed for reinforcements, but he stood frozen, watching the impossible unfold. The humans were dying, but they were winning through sheer will. His heart pounded as he saw one small fighter break through the shield and crash into the ship's main cannon, destroying it completely. The explosion lit up space like a second sun. The Dominion fleet was thrown into chaos. Without their superweapon, their formation broke apart. But the humans had paid a terrible price. Nearly all of their fleet was gone. The Solaris floated powerless, its engines dead, surrounded by debris. On the bridge, Captain Grayson lay wounded. Her vision was fading, but she smiled as she looked at the planet Earth glowing far away. "We did it," she whispered. "We're still here." Those were her last words before the light in her eyes went out. Rethvar's ship was heavily damaged. Fires burned through its corridors. He ordered a ceasefire. His officers protested. "Captain, we can still destroy them." He turned sharply. "Enough, look around you. We have lost more than we can count, and still they stand." The silence that followed was heavy. For the first time in centuries, a Vael commander felt something he had forgotten: respect for his enemy. He opened a direct channel to the remaining human fleet. The few surviving captains appeared on the screen, exhausted, grieving, but unbroken. Rethvar looked at them and said, "You have fought with honor and fire. The Dominion will withdraw." There was no celebration, no joy, only relief and silence. The war was over, at least for now. When the Vael fleet retreated, Rethvar sent one last message to his High Council. His report was brief but powerful. We have encountered a species that does not fear death. They fear only surrender. To fight them is to face your own weakness. The message was marked as classified, hidden from public view, but among the soldiers and commanders who had fought in that war, it spread like a whisper. In the following weeks, the humans buried their dead and rebuilt. They had lost almost everything, cities destroyed, ships gone, families broken, but they had something no enemy could take away, their spirit. Across the galaxy, the name human began to spread among alien worlds. Some spoke it with fear, others with respect. Rethvar resigned from his command soon after returning home. In his personal journal, he wrote, "We believed we knew fear. But fear is not what we thought it was. Fear is not weakness. Fear is the fire that drives them. They do not run from it, they walk through it. And somewhere on Earth, under the quiet sky that had survived the storm, people looked up at the stars with mixed feelings. Sadness for those they lost, pride for what they achieved, and a quiet understanding that the universe would never see them the same way again. The Dominion had come to teach humanity about fear, but in the end, it was humanity that taught the Dominion what true fear really meant. To face an enemy who was terrified, but who fought anyway. An enemy who would rather burn than bow, an enemy called human. Years passed after the Great War between humans and the vile Dominion. The stars that had once burned with explosions were now calm again, but the silence was heavy, filled with memories of what had been lost. Space debris from broken ships still drifted like ghosts, silent reminders of courage and sacrifice. The universe had changed. The Dominion had withdrawn into its borders, no longer as proud or confident as before. And humanity, once seen as weak and primitive, now stood as a mystery that every alien empire quietly respected and secretly feared. On Earth, life began to rebuild. The world was scarred. Cities still showed the marks of bombardments, forests still recovering from the fires that had burned during the invasion. But humans were working tirelessly. They rebuilt their homes, restored their lands, and honored the names of those who had fallen. Every monument, every rebuilt bridge, every street carried a story. Children grew up hearing the tales of heroes who fought in the void. To them, Captain Elena Grayson, the crew of the Solaris, and the many nameless fighters were not just soldiers. They were the reason humanity still existed. The governments of Earth had united during the war, and though old differences tried to return afterward, something deeper held them together. Humanity had seen what unity could achieve. They had stood against an empire that ruled half the galaxy and survived. The idea of one planet, one people was no longer just a dream. It had become a truth written in the blood of millions. But while Earth rebuilt, the Dominion struggled. Within their empire, whispers of the war spread like fire. The stories told by the surviving soldiers began to change the way their people thought. For generations, the Dominion had believed they were superior. They had seen fear as weakness, mercy as failure, and war as glory. But after fighting humans, that belief began to crack. Soldiers spoke of human courage, of how even when surrounded, dying, and hopeless, humans had fought on. Some spoke with awe, others with confusion, and some, quietly, with shame. Captain Rethvar, who had once led the Dominion's armada, had become a legend in his own right. But not because of victory, because of what he did after losing. He retired from the military and spent his days in silence, studying the old reports of the war. Every night he replayed the last transmission from Captain Grayson, the one where her voice broke as she said, "We did it. We're still here." He couldn't understand how a dying commander could speak with pride instead of fear. The words haunted him. Rethvar began writing. He created a private record, his own history of the war. In it, he described not the weapons or the tactics, but the people, the humans. He wrote about how they changed the meaning of fear. They were afraid, he wrote, but their fear was different. It did not control them. It drove them. They fought because they were scared of losing their world, their families, their hope, and that fear made them unstoppable. At first, the Dominion's High Council dismissed his writings as weakness. But something unexpected began to happen. Young officers, soldiers, and scholars started reading his words in secret. They began to question their empire's beliefs. For the first time in their history, the Dominion started to feel guilt. Not because they lost, but because they had misunderstood what strength truly meant. Meanwhile, humanity looked toward the stars again, but not for conquest. They wanted to explore, to understand, to learn. The United Earth Council launched a new mission called Project Dawn, dedicated to peaceful exploration. The first ship of the project was named Grayson's Hope. It was built from the remains of warships and designed for discovery, not destruction. On its hull, a simple message was engraved: "For those who fought so we could reach the stars." Among its crew was Lieutenant Aaron Voss, the grandson of one of the soldiers who served on the Solaris. He had grown up hearing his grandfather's stories of Captain Grayson, of the battles and of the day when humans made the Dominion retreat. To him, this mission was more than exploration. It was a promise to show the universe that humans could bring peace just as fiercely as they had brought war. When Grayson's Hope entered deep space, it carried not weapons but gifts, knowledge, medicine, and messages of peace for other species. Many alien worlds received them with suspicion, but others, curious and cautious, welcomed them. Slowly, humanity began to build alliances not through fear, but through respect. One day, a transmission came from an unknown signal. The ship's sensors identified it. It was a Dominion code. The crew froze. For years, there had been no contact. Many feared it was a trap, but Lieutenant Voss made a choice. He ordered the signal to be opened. The face that appeared on the screen was older, wrinkled and tired, but still commanding. It was Rethvar. His eyes were calm. He looked at the crew silently for a long time before speaking. "I once fought your kind," he said. "I thought I knew what fear was. I was wrong." The crew said nothing. He continued, "Your captain, Elena Grayson, showed me that courage is not the absence of fear. It is choosing to act in spite of it. I have lived long enough to understand that she was right." Voss listened quietly. He had read her name in history books his whole life. Now hearing her spoken of by the enemy who once tried to destroy her felt strange. "Why are you contacting us?" he asked carefully. Rethvar looked down for a moment, then back at the screen. "Because the Dominion has changed. Your courage infected us like a fire. I have been asked to seek peace, to learn as you do." His voice softened. "I wish to visit Earth not as an enemy, as someone who wishes to understand." The crew of Grayson's Hope looked at one another in disbelief. Humanity had dreamed of peace, but no one expected it from the Dominion. After brief discussion, they agreed. A message was sent to Earth. Weeks later, under the protection of a new alliance, Rethvar arrived on the blue planet he had once sworn to destroy. When he stepped onto the surface, he was greeted not with anger, but with silence and curiosity. Children watched him from behind their parents. Soldiers stood in quiet respect, and leaders extended their hands. Rethvar knelt, feeling the ground beneath him, the soil of the world that had defied his empire. "So fragile," he whispered, "and yet stronger than any world I have known." Over the next years, Rethvar became a voice of change within his people. He spoke to both humans and Vale, teaching that fear was not an enemy to destroy but a teacher to learn from. He often said, "The humans showed us that fear is not darkness, it is the shadow of hope. Where there is fear, there is something worth protecting." Slowly, bridges were built between the two civilizations. Trade began, knowledge was exchanged, and though there were still scars, both species began to grow together. The universe started to believe that maybe peace was not a dream after all. Yet deep in the night sky, where the old battlefields floated, the ghosts of the past remained. Pieces of the Solaris, fragments of Dominion ships, and frozen echoes of the war drifted silently. Sometimes explorers would pass through the region and swear they could hear faint voices, calls of courage, whispers of sacrifice. Whether it was real or imagination, no one knew. But everyone who traveled there felt something, a strange, unshakable pride. One day, as Rethvar stood beside Lieutenant Voss in a human museum dedicated to the war, he looked at a statue of Captain Elena Grayson. Her face was carved in steel, her eyes looking toward the stars. "She was the enemy," he said softly, "yet she taught me everything I know." Voss nodded. "She taught all of us," he replied. Before his death, Rethvar wrote one final message. It was addressed to both humans and Vael. "We believed fear was our enemy, but fear belongs to life. To be without fear is to be without purpose. Humans showed us that courage is not born in comfort. It rises from fear, from pain, from love. We thought we knew fear, but they lived it and turned it into power." That message was carved into a monument on Earth and another on the Vael homeworld, two monuments light years apart. both carrying the same words glowing softly in the night. And when travelers read them, they always paused, feeling something stir inside, a mix of fear and pride, of pain and hope. Generations later, children across both worlds would ask their teachers about the war. And every time the story would end the same way. The Veil believed they knew fear, until humans proved them wrong. The universe moved on, but that truth never faded. It became a lesson written not in history books, but in the hearts of every being who looked up at the stars and remembered that courage isn't the absence of fear. It's what burns brightest in its presence.